Masonry can be a handy skill for a beginner, for example, if you actually want to build a wall yourself, or simply plan to help your contractor construct your home. In this very special compilation episode, we not only go over the intricate process of bricklaying itself, but also delve into a faster, alternative bonding method, the precise placement of cavity hooks, and the meticulous finishing with grout. First and foremost, it's actually good to know that a house mainly consists of two types of walls: the facade, which forms the outer wall of your home, and the interior wall, which is generally constructed from quick-build bricks. The most common bricks are the ordinary brick and the quick-build brick, but even within those types there is variation in size, density, and weight. Here we will show the process of bricklaying using quick-build bricks.
So what's a quick-build brick? That is indeed a brick, a meticulously baked piece of clay. However, it is larger in size, which means you can commence your masonry work more efficiently and faster. The stones have hollow spaces, are also made lighter. As a result, they insulate better, so thermally better insulating than a regular stone. And those hollow spaces have more advantages. If cutting slots, for example, to hide electricity or water, you'll be able to chisel out those slots much more easily.
How many stones do you now actually need for your project? To calculate, you first take the width of the stone including the joint. Also measure the length including. Multiply the two measurements. Then divide the square meters by that calculation result. So you know how many stones you need. Build on a sufficiently load-bearing surface that is therefore not porous. That could be a foundation trench or foundation slab. To ensure that you always work at precisely right angles, use a square tool or apply the Pythagorean theorem accurately. Mark where your wall should be. In the corners there should be profiles where you then stretch a rope between. If you are working against an existing wall, first place a profile against it. Insert a block so you can go behind the profile with the rope. Secure it firmly with a wall pin. Check to make sure it is definitely level. You can also drop a plumb line to see if that is the case. A profile also comes in the corners. Fix that with stones. Lay the stone, which the rope must run along, flat. Secure the profile with a clamp and then level it by bracing it with diagonal slats. Do this on both corner sides.
The distance of this small wall is free to determine, so that's why I lay out the number of bricks I want. And I always keep my joint open, maintaining a gap precisely 12 to 13 millimeters, which is roughly equivalent to the width of a standard pencil. And soon, I will indeed also take the time to elaborate on that longer side, so to the end, in such a way that I essentially always end up with approximately half a brick. And if my difference is too large, I can adjust my joint's opening a bit more.
Mark the height for 5 layers of stones on the highest profile. With a pairing, you transfer that distance to the other profile. Also indicate where the other layers will have to be placed, so that you can always stretch the cord at those heights when bricking the next rows. You compensate for the differences in height of the surface by laying the first row perfectly level. Stretch a cord at the height of the first level where you had drawn a line. A miter block can significantly aid with this task. For convenience, use ready-made mortar. First, put water in your concrete mixer. Add the product while the mill runs. Do not deviate from indicated proportions on the packaging.
I always make sure I never put my hand in the mill. And it's still so straightforward to do just that when I divide the bag in two. I carefully lay that flat on the very tip of my shoe. Then I precisely cut that nicely in two, ensuring a clean division. And so, I have 2 small bags that I can pour into my concrete mixer much more effortlessly. Do you want to make mortar yourself right now? Then, initially utilize 3 buckets of sand, 1 bucket of cement, and 1.5 buckets of water. Always start by adding the water first, then half of the sand, followed by the cement, and then finally the rest of the sand. It is also best to add an additive, for example an air entrainer, to make the mortar more workable. Don't overdo it, be careful with it, use a little bit and always do that in the water.
Scoop the mortar into a tub and then apply clumps on the bottom where you lay the stones.
I've already gone through a few stones, but I'm going to try once more, demonstrating the basic principle. The intention is to always take the exact same amount of mortar. Actually, in essence, you're constructing what they call a sandwich in layman's terms. Then you take mortar on your trowel, you allow it to fall back with a quarter turn, and you pick it up again. Place the two sandwiches right next to each other and gently spread the mortar. And what you have left at the end, you use to neatly cut into the side of the previous stone.
For the initial row, you should always use Kim blocks, given that they possess a notably higher insulation value, which is advantageous.
A Kim block is very important for construction, so people always talk about cold bridges. It is much talked about there, but with a Kim block, that's your first stone laid, preventing a cold bridge. Thus, a first insulation layer should already be placed under both windows and walls. Of course, it must be insulation that can withstand the hustle and bustle, because in the end there's serious pressure from all those stones. And so, in other words, that translates into a type of stone that is much better insulating than a regular standard quick-build stone.
You can see that in the much larger perforation. Those are all those holes.
Yes, indeed, the holes. No one diligently searches and searches. Various companies are actively looking to create a stone that possesses a significantly better lambda or insulation value and can meanwhile transfer the strength of the building directly to the foundations.
Utilize the cord as a reference point for accurately laying out the first row of stones and always double-check their alignment with the level. This way you know you begin the next row of stones well. After the first row, immediately apply a slender layer of mortar and place a water barrier foil on it.
After the first row comes the second row, but I'm going to place a DPC foil or water barrier foil first. So first, a thin layer of mortar is carefully applied to guarantee better adhesion to the existing masonry. And where does such a DPC or damp-proof course film earn now? That stops rising damp. So if that foil is placed in, for example, a new building or during a renovation, the intention is that the foil comes just above the target level. It's hidden behind the baseboard. You see that this foil is much wider than my quick-build bricks. Why is that now, I wonder? The foil is subsequently reworked lower into the facade brick, which is quite interesting. In this way, condensation or moisture in the cavity always drains outside. The DPC film may also come a little further on the inside than the masonry. It is also immediately visible to the plasterer that he certainly never plasters further than the damp-proof membrane.
Since this is an interior wall, only a damp-proof membrane is provided against rising damp. For an exterior wall, you need to install an additional damp-proof course, which runs through the facade bricks and will ensure that the moisture from the cavity can escape. That's also why an open mortar joint is in the facade, letting moisture escape. After the water barrier films have been applied, you then simply continue with the placement of the rows. Always remove the excess mortar immediately before it falls down. Also check if the row is nicely in one line. Make sure you never push the stones up against the rope, because then it bends and you lose your crucial reference.
You are now starting to see the herringbone pattern.
So the mortar joint shifts each time with half a brick. We have a half brick bond here.
The new wall that we are placing here, it stands completely separate. Therefore, we have built a small wall on the other side for stability. But at this place, he has not yet made any confirmation to that old wall. That's why I'm now putting about 2 hooks in every 60 centimeters. So I actually do that with an 8 plug, and then I securely screw that hook into the plug. In this way, the wall is anchored with the old wall.
If you are going to plaster the wall afterwards, it is sufficient to just dust it off a bit. If you want to leave the wall as it is, for example in the case of a garage, you must first scrape the mortar from the joints in between with the help of a jointer. Do that in both the horizontal and vertical joints. We have now seen how you can brick quick build stones, but you can also glue them. Not only does this go faster, but you also don't have to wait as long before you can plaster. There's also less chance of efflorescence, meaning fewer white spots appearing on the facade. Moreover, insulating this way is better as there's hardly a joint.
First and foremost, they are different stones in the adhesive system. Not only are they much longer, they also have a groove and a tooth, so they are typically only glued on the horizontal side. The bricks are also sawn after baking, so a few millimeters are carefully sawn off the top and bottom, making each brick perfectly the same height, ensuring uniformity. This is indeed necessary, because by gluing, we have a joint of about 1 millimeter, and therefore, we genuinely have no margin to catch any mistakes. The first row, the foundational layer, is indeed precisely measured. Thus, it is crucial that it stands perfectly straight.
As before, first apply a layer of mortar to the stable surface. Scoop away the excess mortar for curing. Level the stone.
For the first layer, actually, I'm not just focusing intensely on the visual aspect of my level.
At this level difference, I sense if the two stones are perfectly glass, ensuring no height difference.
The first layer must now dry out. Then you can immediately glue the next layer on top of that. When you actually manufacture the glue, ensure that both your tub and your mixer are clean. If there are indeed hard pieces between the glue that end up in the thin joint, then you can no longer work straight. Don't make too much at once either. Mix well, then let it rest for 2 minutes and then mix again. Here too you will stretch out a mason's line once again. This will not so much serve to indicate the precise height, but rather to ensure that you continue to work in one straight line.
To apply the glue on top of the stone, there is such a special tray. So in this, the glue is gently put, and the roll distributes the glue on the top of the speed arch stone. Initially, the first time it must be set up. So, at the back, there is a slide, a configurable slide, and you precisely set the slider to the thickness of 2-meter sheets from the roll. So, not just from those ridges, from the roll. And once this is set correctly, you therefore don't need to touch it anymore. Inside the box, I carefully placed a small amount of high-quality penetrating oil, ensuring that the adhesive glue slides down even more smoothly and effectively.
Carefully place the glue roller at the very start of the row of stones and gently pull it backwards. Here too, a water barrier film must be installed, so it must be glued as well. It's not easy to glue such a foil, so to make it easier, you can turn the next row of stones and glue that. Here, the stones that make contact with the existing wall are not anchored with a pin, but simply glued. When you are done with the rice stones, brush them off and increase the language weather.
It's important the glue has the right thickness. If too thick, it won't come out of the container. And if it's too liquid, it just runs out. An additional check to see if the glue is perfect is when you see the glue pulling into small dots.
With this system, there is no chance of subsidence, so as soon as the first row of stones has hardened, you can immediately do an entire floor. Afterwards, there are no joints that need to be finished. All you have to do now is scrape off any excess glue residue you see between the joints. Remember that every type of masonry must dry out for at least 28 days, whether it's traditional masonry or a bonding. We just built a wall out of quick-build bricks, so it will be located behind the row of facade bricks. You place facing bricks in a somewhat similar manner, but their primary function is notably more decorative and protective. The inner wall and the facade are connected to each other via cavity hooks, also known as cavity anchors. This is how you actually establish extra stability. Cavity hooks must be placed every half meter. Drill holes in the old wall with a masonry drill for that. Insert plugs into the holes where the cavity hooks then come in. There are various systems, but if you want to easily attach cavity hooks to an existing wall, a strike cavity hook with plug is the best option. Then you fold the end of the cavity hook so that it certainly does not protrude from the outside later. Please note, the hook should slope from the inner wall to the outer wall. This way, any condensation in your cavity does not flow into your inner walls, but outward. When placing the next row of bricks, invisibly incorporate cavity hooks into the mortar. Perhaps you are renovating and want to preserve the old interior wall as much as possible and supplement with quick-build bricks where necessary. In that case, you will have to carefully size the stones layer by layer, ensuring they fit the original wall perfectly. Chop the old wall into a stair shape so you can simply place the new quick-build bricks more easily. Make sure to wet the old stones before you apply the mortar so they do not absorb too much. After placing the facade bricks, you still have to grout them. If you want to refill the old joints of a wall, first and foremost remove the old broken joints. For this, grind along the bricks with an angle grinder at least 1 centimeter deep so that you can apply enough joint compound later. Remove remnants with hammer, chisel. Then, brush the joints clean so that the grout can adhere. It is recommended to use a ready-made product because this way you are sure that you get the same joint color everywhere. If you can make a ball out of the material that stays together, then it is quite good to work with. If it falls apart, then you add some more water. Moisten the wall once more before you start grouting.
You always grout from top to bottom, but to explain it, it's easier here on the ground. You first start with the perpends, those are the short verticals essentially. You take the grout in your hand, you carefully compress it between your thumb and index finger, and then gently you press the grout onto the surface of the grouting iron, close to the wall, and then immediately push into the joint. Always wear gloves when working with cement, because cement dries out the skin.
You can grout from your hand, but also from a grout board. After the perpends, you proceed to do the horizontal ones, known as the bed joints. For that, carefully place your grout board directly underneath and gently push the grout in with your grouting iron. Then brush everything off with a soft brush for an even result. Mitering and jointing are tasks that you need to practice a bit to master, but they are also very doable for a DIYer. Want to learn more of this kind? Just surf to our website for countless videos, articles, and subscribe to our free online magazine to not miss any new items.